Okay, yes, go ahead. Yeah, normally you're supposed to be in the back, but first day back, so welcome back.
Jacobo de Regoyo, Sonda Cero, Radio Espagnol. Je voudrais savoir, dans les possibilités qu'il y a à l'Espagne pour les prix de l'électricité, est-ce qu'on pourrait expliquer, séparer les prix du gaz de la facture électrique? C'est une possibilité que l'Espagne a encore dans les mesures qu'il va prendre. Merci.
Je t'invite à lire les conclusions du Conseil européen. Qui, sur son point, sont assez clairs. Je les avais amenés avec moi, enfin, je pensais les avoir amenés avec moi et les ai laissés sur mon bureau, mais il est dit, je crois, au paragraphe 16, que la Commission regardera, analysera attentivement les mesures qui pourraient être prises par un État membre, justement, afin de pouvoir limiter l'impact sur les prix de l'électricité de la situation actuelle sur le marché du gaz. Donc le Conseil européen a abordé cette question et a inclus dans ses conclusions du texte sur ce sujet. Donc un État membre peut effectivement prendre un certain nombre de mesures, les notifier à la Commission européenne qui les analysera comme de droit selon le texte des conclusions du Conseil.
Est-ce que le fait que l'Espagne a demandé maintenant une exception, est-ce que vous pensez que ça pourrait être un exemple à suivre dans d'autres cas, dans d'autres situations, le fait que l'Espagne a demandé une exception sur l'électricité, ça pourrait, dans d'autres domaines de la loi européenne, ça pourrait se répliquer? Merci.
C'est une question qui est vraiment complètement hypothétique. Donc ce n'est pas vraiment un sujet sur lequel je peux t'apporter une réponse. Ce qui est clair, c'est que le Conseil européen a considéré qu'il y avait certainement des circonstances qui pouvaient justifier qu'un État membre sur le marché de l'électricité puisse envisager de prendre des mesures, mais que le rôle de la Commission serait alors d'analyser ces mesures dans le cadre de la réglementation européenne afin de s'assurer de leur compatibilité avec la loi européenne. Par ailleurs, sur ce même sujet, je te rappellerai l'autre conclusion du Conseil européen de la semaine dernière, qui est la confirmation par le Conseil européen de sa demande à la Commission européenne d'analyser d'ici le mois de mai le fonctionnement du marché de l'électricité, ainsi d'ailleurs que le fonctionnement du marché ETS, afin de regarder de quelle manière il devrait éventuellement être adapté, notamment pour tenir compte de l'augmentation de la part des renouvelables dans le fonctionnement de nos marchés. Voilà. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur les questions énergétiques pour moi, ou Tim d'ailleurs, qui n'est pas encore venu sur le podium? So please, in the chat, only keep your hand raised if your question relates to energy. I see 3 hands raised, so let's start with Rosie. As I say, question on energy, please. Rosie, you have the floor.
Hello. Hi there. Thank you very much for taking my question. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have a question on energy. This is the topic.
No, sorry, I'll lower my hand. I must have missed that. Apologies. I'll wait till my turn.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you. Okay, I have other hands raised. Mattia, question on energy.
Yes, hi. My question relates to the possible impact of the change of strategy from the European Union, namely buying more GNL or LNG from the US, because that has an impact on the aim to reducing CO2 emissions or gas related emissions. So I was wondering if are there any plan being drawn up right now, try to see what's the impacts to switching from conventional gas to LNG gas may have an impact on the Commission plans. Thanks.
Mattia, I think what's very important to underline is that if you look at the statement which was issued together with the US on Friday, that it has the green thread running all the way through it. That this is an energy partnership which is not just about substituting one gas source for another in the short term, but it's also about long-term investments, medium-term investments in clean energy, in energy efficiency, bringing down energy use. So I think that needs to be very clear whenever we discuss this agreement. You talk about any specific assessments which are made in terms of the impact of substituting one gas source for another. I mean, it's not something that's been done. As I said, this is a process of replacing replacing pipeline and LNG fossil fuels primarily from Russia with with LNG gas from the US. Now, this is also in the context of a broader diversification effort that we're doing with other international partners. It's not just the US that will be making up this shortfall. And as I said, what we're also doing is bringing down demand for gas, so we maintain very clearly our commitments to the Paris Agreement, and that's also cited in the joint statement. And on the European side, we have our climate law, we have our targets for 2050, 2030 emissions reductions, and we're pursuing them wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. We continue with our focus on energy. Luis, you have the floor.
Yeah, I would like to take a question. I mean, if Spain sends his proposal this week to the European Commission, as they have already said, which time could you expect to have an answer from the European Commission? I mean, which kind of analysis do you need to have this answer? Or in other words, when do you expect that Spain and Portugal will be able to apply this new rule? Thanks.
Thanks, Luis. Look, I don't think that we can give you an exact time frame because obviously, as always, the time that we need depends on the details of the measures that are submitted to us. So obviously, the Commission understands full well the urgency of the situation for Spanish consumers and will certainly analyze the proposals without delay. But it's not possible for us to give you a precise time frame. Right, we continue. We're focusing on energy. Okay.
Yes, Tim, you spoke about this process now of substituting one gas layer from the other. So my question is, do you have an estimation how long will this process last that you can say, okay, we stop taking gas and oil from Russia and from others? Thank you.
Yeah, so what we have set out in the Repower EU communication, which we presented a couple of weeks ago, is that we aim to be completely independent of Russian fossil fuels by 2027, and that we believe it's possible to reduce our demand by 2/3 within a year. So this is the objective which we have set, which has been endorsed by the European Council, by the leaders last week again and previously in Versailles. And what we have committed to do, and which the Council said they're looking forward to us doing, is to present that detailed Repower EU plan by the end of May.
Thank you. We go to Odile. Odile, une question sur l'énergie.
Oui, bonjour. Est-ce que Tim pourrait nous faire un petit point sur l'état de l'avancement des recherches pour des énergies alternatives à partir des algues?
Non, Odile, merci beaucoup. C'est une question passionnante, mais la vocation du Midday n'est pas de faire le point sur l'avancement de l'état des recherches, sur une énergie particulière. Tim a beaucoup de talent, mais je pense quand même qu'il faut que c'est le genre de question sur lequel il faut que nous puissions consulter nos services. Donc nous reviendrons vers toi sur cette question qui concerne aussi certainement Johannes en matière de soutien à la recherche. Oliver, une question peut-être plus politique sur l'énergie.
No, I mean, my question on your on your communication from 2 or 3 weeks ago, the one you referred to, is it possible for the Commission to factor in the problem that in many places there's such a huge demand for example, photovoltaic installation, for heat pumps and so forth, that basically even if people want to switch personally now, install solar panels and so forth, they can't do it. For example, in Austria, there's a big electricity provider called EVN, which has probably, I don't know how many, but definitely more than 1 million customers. They say that actually the next date you can get for a photovoltaic panel on your roof is in 2023, the earliest. So I would assume that's a problem all over Europe. How does that factor in your plans to already rid Europe of lots of Russian gas this year? What can the Commission actually do? There's a demand in technicians, there's demand in panels and so forth and so forth.
Tim.
Yeah, Oliver, I mean, that's something which is not new. That's something which has been a thread throughout the elaboration and the work we've been doing on the European Green Deal, is developing the workforce that we need and adapting the workforce that we currently have for installing these various new green technologies. So that's something which is very much in our thinking as we elaborate the Repower EU plan, and it's something which we know is a global challenge. And I can point you again to the US statement of last week, where one of the points is specifically saying that we will develop a strategy to accelerate workforce development to support the rapid deployment of clean energy technologies. So, as you say, it's an issue which we need to deal with. It's an issue where we have a particularly acute challenge now in terms of speeding up our timeline for getting away from Russian fossil fuels, and that's something that we are working on and factoring into our planning.
Oliver, I think the point you raise is an extremely valid one that nobody is underestimating. And to paraphrase Executive Vice President Timmermans when he was at the press conference in Strasbourg when we presented the communication, he himself said that this was an extremely challenging objective. He used more colorful language than that, but that was the gist of his statement. Now, it's good to acknowledge that there are issues, but the fact that there are issues should not stop us from striving to the best of our ability and beyond that in order to try to reach an objective which is of crucial importance at so many levels. And as we have done in the past, we will focus on trying to lift any hurdle that we can identify that might actually slow down the realization of the objective that we have set out. So, we haven't said this is going to be a walk in the park. On the contrary, we have acknowledged that it's going to be extremely difficult. But we think that it's important to focus people's mind on the fact that there are a certain number of actions that we need to take if we want to be able to achieve this objective. And we will continue working along those lines. Yes, please. On energy still.
Yes. Thanks. Angelo Limambro from ANSA News Agency. I know that it's hard, it's difficult, and it's a very complex issue. But in the end, you are saying that in 2 months from now, there will be no concrete and practical proposals from the EU to tackle the price energy rise, rise in price energy. What about citizens? What about small medium enterprises that are coping? We know that there are many things that member states can do, but also that there is a request for an EU common response that will not arrive before the end of May. What do you say about that? Thanks.
You want to start?
Yeah, Angela, I think, as you said, this is an issue which we've been working on for several months, and the Commission's toolbox, which was issued already in October, is being used very widely, very extensively by member states. It's helping to ease the energy price costs for tens of millions of consumers, for millions of small businesses across Europe. So we have a framework in place which allows member states to take certain measures. The Commission has been issuing guidance, recommendations, advice to member states on how to use those tools. So the tools are there. The Commission is very clearly helping in that sense. There's other tools, of course, in terms of the state aid framework, which perhaps Ariana will want to add on in a minute. And as the Council has asked us last week, and as the President says, we continue to look at the questions of electricity market design. This is something which doesn't change overnight, as you know. It's a large-scale issue. We continue very seriously, very urgently, and very dedicatedly to look at this issue and to see if there are possibilities for the Commission to bring at European level additional support, or to help member states bring in support at national level for the consumers and for the businesses which are facing, as we know, those high energy costs.
Thank you. Ariana.
Just to add, as Tim was mentioning, a little reminder on the fact that last week we have adopted a temporary crisis framework to support the economy in the context of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The temporary crisis framework, of course, applies to all member states equally, and it envisages a number of measures to support the economy in this context. I'm, of course, very happy to guide you all through all of them, but perhaps just to focus on the energy-related one, which is that aid can be granted to compensate for high energy prices. The member states will be able to partially compensate the companies, and in particular energy-intensive users, for the additional costs that they're facing because of the exceptional gas and electricity prices increase. I can, of course, give you all the specifics and thresholds for this, but just to say that the rules are there to grant this extra support that is needed in this moment from a state perspective.
And if I may add, it's precisely because of this sort of dichotomy between the urgency, on the one hand, of alleviating the cost for consumers and businesses, and the necessity to ensure that we have an electricity market that functions, that continues to function as well as it has functioned until now, fulfilling its objectives, in particular, of an amazingly stable supply of electricity across Europe, plus the progressive and actually quite rapid rise of renewables in Europe, that on the one hand, the Commission has reminded member states of all the measures that they can take, adopted this temporary state aid framework, which Ariana has just described, and included in the conclusions of the European Council the possibility for member states to notify to the Commission specific measures which they would want to take. So we're basically firing on all cylinders here, right? On the one hand, short-term measures to alleviate, and on the other, reflections on broader possible reforms of the electricity market. But let's not forget, again, let me emphasize this, the current functioning of the electricity market pursues an objective that remains perfectly valid. That's the first thing. And therefore, we should make sure that we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater by adapting the functioning of the market to respond to a short-term crisis and then creating another issue. So whatever we come forward with has to be extremely well thought through in order to keep our focus on the long-term perspective, which, by the way, also coincides with what we need to do to get rid of our dependency on Russia, and that is basically have much stronger role for non-fossil fuels, for renewables. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that, the electricity market, I don't know if you're a specialist in its functioning, but it is an amazingly intricate machine. right? And it's not about tinkering at the edges and saying, we're going to get rid of a problem by doing this small change and that small change. You have to make sure that you continue to have an electricity market that delivers what Europeans need most of all, which is a stable supply of electricity 24 hours a day, all year round. And if you do comparisons, and I know this from my past work, so that's why I'm, taking a bit of time here, but you can look at a certain number of other developed economies, right, which suffer from blackouts and stuff like that, which we don't have in Europe, despite the amazing diversity of our electricity mix, of the generation of the mix, despite the fact that we've got different energy markets, et cetera, et cetera. So we have achieved a lot, and what we need to do is to continue to ensure that that market works as efficiently as it has been working now and as effectively, and adapted to the evolution in our energy mix and to the new challenges that arise. So taking a bit of time to do this is, quite frankly, absolutely necessary if we want to avoid serious side effects which everybody would suffer from. And in the meantime, we have offered all these short-term measures which allow member states to alleviate the concerns of consumers. I think that's the right approach to follow. Right. I see there's a lot of interest in the energy issue, so we continue. David.
Yeah, hi. This is a follow-up from on the repower communication. You just said, you gave the 2027 date, and obviously you've mentioned that, EU leaders have mentioned that, everybody's mentioned that. I just can't see it in the document. I can see the 2030 date, so I was just wondering if you could sort of repeat the calculations, how we get to 2027. I mean, obviously it could even be earlier, but it'd be nice to know. Thanks.
Tim.
So when you say you can't see it in the document, David, I guess you're referring to the Council conclusions from last week. I'm also looking at them, and I don't see those numbers there. But if you look at the previous Versailles Declaration, if I remember correctly, there's two references. One is to well before 2030, and one is specifically to 2027. But I can double check where those are mentioned. But it's very clear that there's consensus on that.
And if I may add, what these conclusions do include is a request to the Commission to come up with a detailed plan as to how to reach that objective. So it is pending work, which is ongoing, and we will come back with more specifics in due time. David, I see you have your hand raised still. You have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was referring to the repower communication. So in that, there's no reference to a 2027 date, and I was just wondering whether that was added by the EU leaders. Somehow I missed that, or whether it was in the original proposal, the communication by the Commission. Thanks.
So we're getting into the sequencing there of the different steps over the last few weeks. As you say, the Repower EU communication, the Commission referred to well before 2030. That's what we put on the table. We took to that Versailles summit the idea that we could do it by 2027, and that's an idea which got collective support from the member states, and now that's where we go forward based on that specific date.
Okay, we continue on energy. Mose.
Yes. Hello. Thank you, Eric. I have also related questions to energy, maybe not, let's say, in the short term, but perhaps an alternative in the future. It's about the so-called low carbon liquid fuels, especially in the transport sector, such as we call them, biofuels or electrofuels, including hydrogen. And if I'm not wrong, I think there was a Commission consultation on these fuels or the supply chain for them last autumn. It finished in November. And I would like to ask what is happening now. I mean, is the Commission working on it? Does it plan, let's say, initiative or strategy on how to make this possible in the future? Thank you.
Tim.
Yeah, I think, Mosey, I saw you'd asked us about that as well over the weekend by email, and we're looking into the details. You know, normally a public consultation comes with a certain number of follow-up steps. We take the time to assess the feedback that comes from stakeholders. I'll have to come back to you on the details, and I think there's an element that I need to discuss as well with colleagues working on the transport files.
Paola.
Thank you, Eric. My question is connected, although slightly different topic. So Commissioner Gentiloni was just now in Bucharest saying that the Commission will present derogations to EU energy taxation rules. Could you maybe give us some clarity on what these derogations might look like and when are they coming? Thank you.
Verlet.
So yes, in response to the current geopolitical context, the Commission put forward guidance confirming the possibility for Member States to regulate prices in exceptional circumstances. The possibility for Member States to apply reduced VAT rates on domestic energy bills was confirmed by the Council in December 2021 when it reached an agreement on updated rules for VAT rules. And so this is what I can say for the moment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Paula. I think we will have to come back on this issue at a later point in time. I see you still have your hand raised. Go ahead. See if we can give you the clarification.
Thank you. It's just to understand, this is something new, something that the Commissioner said will be coming in the coming weeks. So is something coming from the Commission?
Look, Paula, I think we just said we will need to check and come back to you on that, but I think that shows the relative newness of this issue, but we will check and come back.
And if I may just add, so indeed, as we indicated in the communications of the 8th and the 20th of March, there are several options for emergency measures which are being considered with a view of providing temporary and targeted relief to end consumers in the short term, strategic autonomy in the medium term, and decarbonization in the longer term. And so direct and targeted support to vulnerable citizens and businesses can help citizens and businesses struggling with excessive energy prices without negative spillover on Member States' common environmental and budgetary perspectives. And furthermore, the Commission stands ready to provide guidance to Member States on how to make best use of the legal framework, including on targeted and temporary country-specific derogations under the Energy Taxation Directive, so as to avoid distortions to the single market.
Thank you. We continue on energy. Samuel.
Oui, bonjour Eric, désolé, c'était pour une question sur notre sujet. Je
relèverai
la main plus tard.
Merci. Je ne vois plus de questions sur l'énergie et donc je reviens à Rosie qui avait une question sur un autre sujet. Go ahead, you have the floor now.
Hi there, thank you so much, and sorry for earlier, I was doing two things at once and overestimated my capacities. Over the weekend, US President Joe Biden said with regards to President Putin that this man cannot remain in power. Is that a view the Commission would share? And just to clarify further, High Representative Borrell in the past has said that the goal of these most recent sanctions is not regime change. Is that still the case? Thank you very much.
Rosie, I believe there was a very clear statement from the HRVP over the weekend. He was asked exactly the same question, and he said definitely that we are not seeking regime change in Russia, that these are issues for the Russian people, certainly not for us. So I invite you to read his statement on this, which could not be clearer. Okay, this opens the Foreign Affairs chapter, so please only keep your hand raised if your question is on Foreign Affairs. Samuel.
Oui, est-ce que la question des golden passports, tu peux mettre ça dans Foreign Affairs? J'imagine que oui, parce que...
Allez, on va faire une exception, on va dire que oui.
D'accord. Parce que c'est un peu lié aux sanctions aussi, donc j'aimerais bien savoir si vous avez une estimation du nombre de citoyens russes ou bélarusses qui sont sur la liste des individus sanctionnés et qui ont pu faire l'acquisition de golden passports.
Non, nous ne pouvons pas te donner cette estimation. C'est bien pour cela que nous demandons aux États membres de regarder quels sont les passeports et visas qui ont été attribués dans le passé à la lumière des événements d'aujourd'hui. We continue on Foreign Affairs. Francesco.
Golden passports, golden visa. Can you clarify one thing in your press release? You are, if I'm not wrong, you are calling for an immediate withdrawal of residence permits issued to any Russian or Belarusian national that subject to EU sanctions, but you are not calling for the same immediate withdrawal for people who are subject to sanctions but who have a passport. There, in that case, you just say that states should determine whether citizenship was granted and then decide whether they should stop it. So, can you clarify that? Is perhaps just a misunderstanding.
Distinction between visa and passports, if I understood you correctly. Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Francesco, for this question. I think, well, let me maybe first say that, of course, the main recommendation as regards the golden passports is for member states to immediately repeal such schemes and stop handing out such golden passports. And as for the difference that you're evoking here, I think it's quite clear if you look at someone who has acquired citizenship. It's something different. It's than just a residence permit. And what we're calling for is for member states to indeed, assess the possibility to withdraw these schemes. These passports. This, of course, will depend on the specific rules that you have in place on naturalization in the respective member states. So it is for member states to look into this and to take steps for the revocation following the necessary national procedures. Yeah.
Thank you. We continue on the issue of foreign affairs / golden passports and visas. Alex.
Hi, can you hear me?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yep, thanks. I mean, I'm just following up on that. It just, Christian, it seems like you're stepping, or the Commission is stepping there's like a little half step from recommending that these golden passports to sanctioned individuals be revoked. It seems like it's very careful language. I was just wondering why that was, in the sense that obviously it's a national competency. So is this about, I mean, is this as far as you can go in asking a country to think about these passports that have already been given to sanctioned individuals and try to find ways to reverse that passport, to somehow strip their nationality? Is that, I'm just trying to understand why it's so carefully phrased, I'll be honest. Thanks.
Look, Alex, I wouldn't concur that it is particularly carefully or cautiously phrased here. I mean, I think it's a quite clear and determined recommendation given by the Commission, first of all, to really immediately terminate such schemes, and then second of all, to determine whether citizenship previously granted to Russian or Belarusian nationals subject to sanctions should be withdrawn. There is, of course, legal elements to this to be taken into account when we're talking about the right of citizenship that someone has acquired. There are, so then, as I said, there are national rules. Then, of course, there are also principles established by the European Court of Justice of the European Union regarding the loss of citizenship, which is, of course, in normal circumstances, a very harsh sanction. And so I think it is only normal to apply due process and the relevant legal standards, follow the decisions and the principles set up by the European Court of Justice in this respect. This is all that this is saying, but I think that the course of action and of the direction is very, very clear.
Alex, you had a follow-up?
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I mean, for the main headline of the day, which is the overall asking countries to revoke the schemes altogether, are there still any countries that have not made any move on that? It seems to me, but I'm not a mathematician, I feel like that we're pretty well covered in countries having revoked them or at least made a pledge to. I was just wondering whether there are any countries, if you can, which maybe you can't, but that are still haven't done anything satisfied on that front. Thanks.
Yeah,
Christian.
Look, on the citizenship schemes, I think quite a bit of progress has indeed been made in the past years. We had, in essence, 3 member states that were running golden passport schemes, which were Malta, Cyprus, and Bulgaria. As you know, the Commission had opened infringement procedures against Malta and Cyprus in this context, and we had been in contact, writing political letters to Bulgaria on their scheme. Bulgaria has just, in recent days, voted in the National Parliament for the definitive abolition of the citizenship scheme. In Cyprus, basically since, I think since November 2020, it is no longer granting naturalizations. And then you know that in Malta, a new scheme is still underway. So basically at the moment, actively, I think it is only Malta that is still granting citizenships, while we have seen also in this context a positive step very recently that Malta has decided no longer to suspend granting such citizenships to Russian and Belarusian nationals. So that's in a nutshell, I think, where we stand. There are still ongoing infringement proceedings from our side against Malta and also Cyprus.
Thank you. Let's finish questions on this issue now of golden passports and visas. So please only keep your hand raised if your question is on this. Mattia.
No, I just lowered my hand. It's not a question. It is a question of foreign affairs, but it's not a question on visa.
We'll come back. Mose, you had a follow-up question as well on this.
Thanks. Yes, indeed. We know that some of these golden passports, let's say, have been issued by member states on quite dubious, let's say, conditions. And there was money laundering involved, and the Commission has always been very critical against them. So my question is, let's say, if a member state doesn't recall such citizenship to persons on the sanction list, can, let's say, another member state refuse to recognize these passports because let's say the big advantage of them is that they grant access to all member states? Thank you.
Christian.
Well, Mose, you're right that, and this is something that we've been pointing out for quite a while, that these schemes indeed of systematically granting citizenship in exchange for investment raise clear security and money laundering, tax evasion and corruption risks. for the member state concerned, but also beyond it for the union as a whole. This is why for quite a while, or one of the reasons for quite a while, where the Commission has been very clear in saying that European citizenship is not for sale, and why we have taken clear action. The onus of the responsibility is, of course, on the member state that grants a citizenship, as European citizenship comes with rights for a person who has received it. So this is why, of course, this recommendation also today once more addresses the member states who are still running such schemes and asks once more to end them.
So, as I was saying, the onus is on the member state that has issued the passport to take action. It's at that level that the decisions need to be taken. Francesco.
People who are subject to sanctions are actually still holding passports or visas that were purchased under these schemes. So my question is, are you asking governments to share with you the list of people that have bought passports or visas? And if not, why not? Given that this is, as you repeated now, it poses risks apart from the situation now in Russia and Ukraine, has been identified as a risk of money laundering, security, etc., by you for years now. So why are you not asking, if you have not already done it, to share the list of people who have received these passports or visa? Thanks.
Christian.
Well, look, Francesco, this is something that is not really new. We have already in our 2019 report on golden passports and visas, or on investor residence schemes, we have already said that there is an issue with incomplete information, that clear statistics and applications received, accepted and rejected are missing or insufficient. So this is also why the Commission does not have full information on all persons who have been naturalized, or also on which persons might have acquired, which persons who are to whom sanctions apply might also have acquired EU citizenship under these schemes. So it's also in this context again that we are coming with these very clear recommendations, and we are asking member states to take immediate action. We will also discuss with member states, in the context of the implementation of this recommendation, the issues concerning the statistics. So this is clearly something that is on our radar and that we will further take up with member states.
Francesco, you have a follow-up.
I mean, are you saying that you have asked this list to concerned member states, and they have not provided to you full lists, or have you not asked the list? And so this is something that may be discussed in the future, and that is what you refer to statistical things. Can you clarify these things?
Frankly, I don't think it works exactly like that. But what I've said is, and let me remind that we have already, the Commission has already in 2019 issued a report where, of course, we have asked member states for information. And again, also in this context, we are asking member states to take immediate action now, and we will take this up further with member states, also particularly the issue you raise concerning the statistics.
Thank you. George.
Hello. Just a final thing on this thing. You said, Christian, just now that Cyprus has stopped granting citizenship since November 2020, I believe, if we could just confirm that date. And also, if that has happened, is the infringement procedure due to be finished soon? Is something else that the Commission is expecting specifically from Cyprus too, and the infringement procedure? Thanks.
So, to go into a bit more detail on Cyprus. So Cyprus appealed its scheme indeed and stopped receiving new applications on 1 November 2020. On 15th October 2021, Cyprus revoked the citizenship of 39 investors and 6 dependents. The Cypriot Interior Minister sent a letter to the Commission in October 2021, confirming the developments in Cyprus, as well as providing information on the revocation on 7 cases identified following early investigations. The Commission will continues to carefully assess the situation in Cyprus before taking any next steps.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions on this issue, so I go back to Mattia, who had a question on foreign affairs.
Obviously, the upcoming summit, EU-China. I was just wondering if in light of the European Leader Summit with Joe Biden here this week, something has changed in the way we approach this upcoming summit, and yes or no, it doesn't matter. I just want to know also what the goals now are, what we expect to achieve thanks to this summit. Thanks.
Thank you. You were breaking up a little bit, but I think we got the gist of your question. I think you were referring to last week's meeting with Joe Biden and this week's summit with China.
Yes, Mattia, thanks for your question. Well, I mean, the upcoming EU-China summit will be an opportunity to promote EU interests. And in that regard, the war in Ukraine will, of course, be a major topic for the upcoming discussion. But this should also not preclude that the summit allows both sides to touch upon bilateral discussions among them. Voilà, that's what I can say.
Thank you very much. We continue with foreign affairs related questions. Oliver, your question is indeed, it's economic, I see, but also foreign affairs. Go ahead and raise it.
Hi, thank you for giving me the word again. Yeah, my question is on the Commission's plans to enable Ukrainians fleeing to Europe to use their Ukrainian currency they carry in cash, or their bank cards or credit cards, which currently isn't really working because most banks in Europe don't accept hryvnia. They're, of course, worried about default and whatever. Apparently, there are 2 options on the table. One is to use the EU budget as some sort of a guarantee, but there seems to be a problem with finding the proper legal basis for that. So I'd be interested in what the legal basis might be in the treaties for this. The other one would be a default option where member states would sort of pool money and create a fund to do that. So my question is, which legal basis might there be possible? Can you also confirm that the ECB has already ruled out that it would guarantee these funds? And thirdly, what amounts of money do we talk about? I mean, it's of course just a rough estimate, but what kind of a sum are we talking about that might have to be guaranteed to help these refugees cover the cost of living in the first place? Thank you.
Ariana has volunteered to try to provide you with some elements on a very, very tricky, difficult issue. Ariana.
Yes, I'm afraid I won't be able to reply specifically to all the questions you have raised, but I can, of course, provide a more general comment on the situation. So, first of all, Ukrainian refugees have the right to temporary protection in any EU country. The status includes residence permits, welfare support, access to education and labour market, and also provides access to other services like banking. For example, the Payments Account Directive provides access to a basic bank account for all legal residents of the EU, and also Ukrainian refugees can benefit from it. The directive gives a right to access to a payment account with basic features to all consumers, including the refugees and the asylum seekers. They can benefit from it as well. the bank, the possibility to withdraw cash with cards and to use cashless payment transactions, it continues as normal for the Ukrainian refugees. For what concerns cash, we understand that there is a very exceptional situation and there is pressure on Ukraine and on its central bank at the moment. So it's not a surprise that the Ukrainian central bank had to resort to some form of restriction of capital exports. Ukrainian refugees can freely exchange their currency via credit cards, as I was saying, but we're aware that they are experiencing some difficulties in exchanging cash. And indeed, some do cross borders only with cash at this time. At the beginning of the war, there was a bit of lack of clarity about this restriction and lack of information. And in the meantime, many authorities, such as the Ukrainian Central Bank, have clearly advised refugees to take along and use credit cards and not only cash. You were mentioning the ECB. The ECB is currently assessing a way forward to allow cash conversion by refugees. And in parallel, central banks by some member states, including Poland and Romania, are working on possible mutual solutions to this important issues. Of course, we welcome all these efforts. We are in contact with the ECB and other central banks to encourage them to find solutions in order to show our solidarity also in this respect to the Ukrainian refugees.
Well, that was very comprehensive. Thank you very much. And I'm sure it's a subject we will have an opportunity of coming back to. In the meantime, I think Carl has a question on this as well.
Yes, a follow-up. Can you confirm that the ECB could not actually guarantee or provide a public guarantee scheme for the conversion of Ukrainian cash? And then I think there is a similar problem with roaming charges. Is the Commission working on a way for Ukrainian refugees to benefit from the same advantages as European consumers?
So, Carl, we're not in the business of confirming or denying things that are the responsibility of the ECB. So please address your question to them. On the issue of roaming charges, I would call Johannes to the podium.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thanks, Eric. On roaming charges, I can say that we welcome and we have welcomed already the initiative of several operators in Europe that have already been waiving or reducing international call charges to Ukraine and roaming surcharges in Ukraine. And there was also initiatives to provide this free SIM cards, for example, or free Wi-Fi at border spots. There was also a letter right at the beginning of the conflict that Commissioner Breton had sent to the BEREC chair. The BEREC is the body of European regulators for electronic communications, calling on BEREC to play an active role there, together with the Commission, to facilitate communications between the EU and Ukraine and ensuring a coordinated response, notably as regards the technical implementation of such measures. But for the moment, this is measures that are done by the operators, something that we facilitate and help with, but it's not the legal side of things, let's say.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now close the chapter related to Ukraine and take a question on the nuclear deal with Iran. Mose.
Yes, thank you very much, Eric, for giving me the floor again. This is, I suppose, the question to Nabila. We know that the Action Service and Borrell are playing a coordinating role in these talks. I would like to ask Nabila, what sense do you have? Do you think that a deal with Iran is very close now? That's my question.
Thank you for the musical interlude, Mose. Brings a bit of entertainment to this rather dry midday briefing. Nabila.
Negotiations in Vienna to finalize the deal are ongoing and are reaching the critical final stage. The HRVP Borrell have said over the weekend in the margins of the Doha Forum in Qatar, we are very close, but there are still some issues pending. We are working to be back in Vienna as soon as possible and to conclude the deal. The negotiations have paused, as you know, on the 11th of March to allow the delegations to take a final and most difficult political decision. A final text is essentially ready on the table and it must be concluded. And of course, as the coordinator of the Joint Commission of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Actions, HRVP Borrell and his team continue to be in touch with all JCPOA participants and the US to close the agreement.
Thank you. Are there other questions for us today? Yes, please.
Sorry, I have to come back to the EU-China summit. Nabila, what will be your message to the Chinese leaders concerning Ukraine? Thank you.
I think you will have to wait until we've had the summit, and then we will tell you what our message to China is on the situation in Ukraine. Our principles, when it comes to Ukraine, are very clear. Ukraine is a sovereign state. It is the subject of an illegal, very brutal invasion, and the international community has expressed with an amazingly strong majority in the United Nations its rejection of this invasion. And therefore we consider that the duty of all countries in the UN is to work to stop this conflict, to get Putin's troops to withdraw, and to respect the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Ukraine. This is a message which I think is addressed not just to China, but to every country in the world that believes in the principles of the UN Charter. Right, Lorenzo. Still on foreign affairs.
You have informations, and are you concerned about information concerning the fact that Turkey is offering to the oligarchs the possibility to an alternative shelter, if you want, for their boats, their yachts in their ports, and it's offering actually the possibility to circumvent the EU sanctions to the oligarchs that have this kind of assets.
Your question is whether we have information. Sorry, I'm not...
Whether you have information about this and whether you are doing anything, if you are concerned, because this is clearly a circumvention of the EU sanctions.
Okay. Nabila?
Personally, I'm sorry, but I will have to get back to you on this. I don't have any information on this. But as you know, our position is very clear on circumvention. The circumvention, it was in the Council conclusion, circumvention must stop.
Okay, I will take one last question today, and it goes to David. I'll take two last questions.
It's a question, I think, for Miriam. It's about last week's food security package. And in there was some mention of the 500 million euros is the crisis reserve fund. I was wondering how much of that is reserved for fertilizers, if it is at all, because we're seeing reports that 50 million has been reserved for fertilizers, and I can't see that. I thought it was totally broke down according to member states. Thanks.
Miriam.
Thank you, David. So the regulation that was adopted last week includes, as you well say, a package of 500 million euro to support, as a crisis reserve, farmers that are most in need now and hit by the crisis. This package is split in national envelopes that you have in the Regulated Act. And then member states can decide how they want to use and which sectors they want to cover with this extra support, that they can also, on top of it, provide extra support up to 200% per member state.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we do go to the last question. Katalin.
Thank you, Eric. It's a couple of questions. I'm sorry, but they are short. And that is about the Recovery and Resilience Facility in the Hungarian Recovery Plan. The Prime Minister Orbán sent a letter to the President last week. My question is whether the President is planning to reply soon to the letter. Can you tell us when she is planning to reply? And as Prime Minister Orbán made his letter public, whether the Commission or the President intends to make her letter also public. Secondly, we also hear... Okay.
So, it's a very simple answer. The President and the Commission in general always answer letters that are addressed to them, and we will do so in due time. I cannot give you a deadline. As to whether we make the letter public or not, we never make such letters public. As you know, they are for the recipient of the exchange of letters. Whether the Hungarians then make it public is a different issue. Now we can move to your second issue.
Thank you. We also hear from the Hungarian sources that the negotiations are speeding up about the Hungarian recovery plan, and the Hungarian side is more ready to compromise, to comply with the conditions the Commission set for this. So can you confirm this? And also, will you confirm that the Commission didn't promise any disbursement from the recovery facility to Hungary, since we have rather controversial announcements from the government side on this matter? And I still have one more.
My God, that's a lot of last questions. Look, Katalin, you know, we've had these conversations here in the press room time and time again. We do not comment as a question of principle on ongoing negotiations. And therefore, and there are often, comments that are made by sources usually unknown on the other side of the discussion table about how negotiations are going with this or that country. As a matter of principle, we announce when there is a position of the Commission, when there is a final position of the Commission, and we will maintain that position as well when it comes to the negotiation on the Hungarian recovery plan and the conditions that would apply to it. Sorry, last question. Or next question.
Yeah, about this disbursement of money, you didn't reply to that.
No, I'm certainly not going to reply to that. It falls under the caveat that I've given previously. You will be informed of the final Commission recommendation, because ultimately that's what it is, to Council once the Commission has reached that point in time.
And the last question, Prime Minister Orbán also announced that Hungary will apply for the loan in the recovery facility. Has the Commission received the application from the Hungarian side?
That's a question to which perhaps Verle can provide a factual answer.
Hi, Katalin. So far, I can confirm that Hungary has not submitted a specific request for loan support under the Recovery and Resilience Facility in line with the requirements that the regulation sets out to make such a request. These are laid down in Article 14.3 of the regulation. So it would need to set out, for example, the reasoning for the loan support. It would need also to justify the higher financing need and the additional reforms and the additional investments for which milestones and targets should be agreed. And it's clear that once Hungary were to do this, the Commission would then need to perform a new assessment of the plan, and the Council would need to then approve the related Council implementing decisions, so basically mirroring the procedure which is ongoing at the moment. And as Eric has been saying, we are continuing our assessment of the Hungarian plan to make sure it lives up to all the objectives and the legal requirements of the Recovery and Resilience Facility. That's all we can say at this stage.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our midday briefing. Thanks for your participation, and see you tomorrow.